Hi to everyone, and thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to speak about the impact of the medical progress on the increasing lifespan inequality. So we already heard that there is an increase in the lifespan inequality. Here we borrowed from Waldron, and you can see that the life expectancy at age 65 for the lower half and the upper half of the income distribution increased by about 6 years from 1912 to 1941. And this might have several consequences. So one might be economic justice, but apart from that, it might make the pension system more aggressive, or it might also imply some spending bias towards the more wealthy in the healthcare system. So we want to know what are the sources of the increase in the life expectancy gap. So here you can see a short overview about our model. We propose a life cycle model with heterogeneous agents, and which is rooted in demography. So basically, we account for mortality rates, we include the model age at death, and we distinguish individuals by their initial variety level. The model is able to address the empirical problem of reverse causality between income and health. And we also find that a big share of the increase in the life expectancy gap across the income distribution and between different educational groups can be explained by medical progress or the cardiovascular revolution, which occurred in the 1970s. So here you can see a causal diagram of our model. So you basically see some green and some red arrows. The green arrows denote a positive causal effect from one variable to the other, whereas the red arrows denote a negative causal effect from one variable to the other. We have decision variables, so control variables. We have the resulting state variables, which are human capital, the model age at death, survival probability, and financial wealth. Then we have some intermediate functions, which you can see in the red color. And most importantly, I would say, are the initial characteristics, which basically determine the heterogeneities of our agents in the model. And these are the effort of schooling, the learning ability, and the frailty level. And all of these characteristics, the initial characteristics, they are constant across generations, whereas the exogenous factors are the factors that change across generations and might then lead to the disparities in the life expectancy. So we distinguish between 3 cycles in the life cycle. The first is education, then we have the working life and retirement of an agent, and our model has several outputs, so mainly 5 outputs by cohort, which are the education distribution, the income distribution by education, it's the model age at death, by education group, and by income group, the mortality rates, and the contribution of the exogenous factors to the model age at death, or to the life expectancy. So here you see the economic problem, and at the very end you see the human capital, how human capital evolves over time. It is affected basically by education, by mortality, and by experience after education has been completed. Here you see how the survival probability evolves, so it depends negatively on the mortality rate, and the mortality rate is modeled as a function of the model age at death and time. Model age at death, again, depends on the healthcare investments which individuals can make to increase the lifespan, and by the technology, by the medical technology, which here is shown as AM. And we also distinguish between initial model age at death, between the agents, and the initial model age at death is determined by the frailty level, by the initial frailty level, which we assume to have a mean of 1 and be gamma distributed. And finally, you can see the medical progress. So the growth rate, or the change of the medical progress over time, is 0 before the cardiovascular revolution, which we denote as TA, and it increases after the cardiovascular revolution, with higher educated individuals having earlier access to new medical technology, and lower educated persons need more time until they reach the new technological frontier. So here you can see some parameters. These are basically just the parameters that we estimated out of the data, some standard parameters. That's just to say that we have these 3 unknown parameters, which we can neither observe nor estimate, and we apply the Bayesian melding technique, combined with the IMIS algorithm, run the model over 200 million times in order to get some sort of sphere, which is the distribution of the possible inputs leading to the outputs that we observe. So here you can see how well we are able to fit the outputs that we want to basically fit. So the red dots are the outputs that we observe. On the very left, you can see the wage rate by education, so for individuals with college education and less than college education. In the middle, you can see the the education distribution, so college and non-college by cohort, and the life expectancy by cohort. And on the very right, you can see the mortality rates by education and by cohort, where you can see that we don't have data for 1900 and 1920 cohort because it was not able, using the CDC data, to estimate these mortality rates. And you can see that we are able to fit the observed data very well, so we're kind of happy with how we estimated the parameters. Here you can see the first results. So in this figure, we see on the very left the initial model age at death by education. In the middle, we see the effort of the learning ability, and on the right, we see the effort of schooling. And we can see that there has been a convergence in all of these 3 variables. So the second result that we get is how the life expectancy at age 40 developed over time. You can see that for the 1900 cohort, there was more or less a difference between the top decile and the bottom decile of 6 years, whereas for the 1960 cohort, the inequality or the gap increased to 12 years. So basically the top 10, the 10th decile had a life expectancy increase at age 40 of about 10 years, whereas the first decile had only an increase of 4 years. Here we run a counterfactual analysis. So on the right you can see we're shutting down various channels and see how would life expectancy develop if there had been no medical progress, or if the cardiovascular revolution would have occurred at another point in time, and so on and so forth. And the left is bar plot. We use a fixed effects model basically to estimate the contribution of each exogenous factor to the increase in life expectancy. For instance, this is with respect to the 1900 cohort, and you can see that for the 1960 cohort there has been an increase relative to the 1900 cohort of about 10 years, which is in line with empirical literature. And the most important driver has been this cardiovascular revolution, so the medical progress in reducing heart diseases. So yeah, we now just would like to implement our model in our overlapping generations model, such that we can analyze policies to reduce income, wealth, and life expectancy inequality. And let's see if that's worked out. Yeah. Thank you.